All right, up next, we have Dr. Charles Fisher introducing Keegan Raub.
Hi, my name is Dr. Charles Fisher, and I'm here to introduce Keegan Raub to the Honors Forum 2025. I had the pleasure of meeting Keegan and his brother Tavish last year when they took an honors seminar with me on the art of happiness. I have to say, these are two of the most brilliant young men I've ever met in my life, my 30-year teaching career. Romulus and Remus, Castor and Pollux, Keegan and Tavish. I'm here to talk about Keegan, of course. This last quarter, we did an honors capstone project in the art of fiction. Keegan wrote 3 short stories for me and an essay on the art of fiction, on craft, technique, and influence. His short stories were original, wonderfully weird. His style is Baroque, full of interesting diction, big ideas, lyricism, sexuality, transgression, violence. One thing I can say about Keegan is that his art is wholly his own. It's a mark of a true writer. I was proud to work with this young man, and I'm excited to see what he does in the future as an emerging writer. So it's my privilege and honor to introduce to you today, Keegan.
I was nervous before that video played, but now I'm feeling pretty good. I'd also like to preface by saying that, I was not made aware that there was going to be a future Marine here, so I'm feeling a little bit less impressive. But for my capstone, as you heard, I wrote a collection of 4 pieces of short fiction and an essay analysis that was 7 pages long. Just exploring the idea of fiction and the self, and more kind of using the self as a container for a wider discussion of more philosophical, phenomenological concepts, rather than the other way around, using fiction as an exploration of just the self. This presentation is like a teaser trailer of that essay, so I'm not going to read the whole essay out. You're welcome, but I'm going to have a little bit of a summary here. And if you are interested in actually reading the full essay, I have a QR code on the last slide where you can just scan and pull up a PDF in case you want that context. So I'd like to begin by asking the question, what is fiction? John Gardner postulated in his book, The Art of Fiction, that fiction does its work by creating a dream in the reader's mind. This tentative definition stages a necessary framework for his discussion of literary technique, but the definition itself is rich with implication. In his interpretation of dreams, Freud described the dream as a sort of substitute for the thought processes, full of meaning and emotion. Jung went still further in Man and His Symbols, claiming that dreams were a process of spontaneous symbol generation in the human mind. Jung's use of the term qualifies that words or images only become symbols when they have a wider unconscious aspect that can never be precisely defined. He sees these symbols as expressions of human instincts, attesting that these manifestations are what I call archetypes. They are not mere names or philosophical concepts. They are pieces of life itself, integrally connected to the living individual by the bridge of the emotions. It is only through our contact with and experience of these archetypes, which can be thought of as the human organism's method of accepting and interpreting our inherited instincts, Jung claims, that we may fulfill our process of individuation or self-actualization. In this way, we may more readily grasp the essential concept of all artistic, philosophical, and spiritual endeavors. As Dr. Ian McGilchrist puts it in The Master and His Emissary, the general is encountered through, rather than in spite of, the particular, and the infinite through, rather than in spite of, the finite. In the course of completing the short story collection A Peron, that is my capstone project, I've begun to recognize this individuation process occurring in my work. On the page, I've tried to represent the symbols lurking in the twilight of my mind, and through their clarification, I feel I am better equipped to understand their messages. Each story bears the name of a classic archetype. the lover, the sage, the changeling, the magician. And each demonstrates a thwarted process of individuation. 2 deal with literal perversion in its psychosexual manifestation, while all negotiate its wider context as it relates to the corruption of potential. The collection itself, by way of relation, gives dimension to their discourse and hopefully conveys the integral dynamism of the archetypes as the contingents between the conscious ego and unconscious being. One may rightly wonder why these themes made themselves salient in my work. What exactly are they in their unpalatable manner attempting to express? To begin with, let us place the thematic elements of my work in context. The title of the collection itself, Aperon, is Greek for boundless, infinite, of indefinite boundaries, and is probably most closely associated with Anaximander's use of the word as the defining principle that originated the universe. That is partially fallacious, since it could be argued that what Anaximander meant by the boundless was that which cannot be experienced or that which has no origin. And only by such equally complex and parsimonious logic can be the only origin. This balancing of gnosis and noesis symbolically conveys how the process of thought, the encounter, becomes the essential product. Just as Dr. McGilchrist proposes, it is the encounter of our senses with the natural world that defines their existence. This is the loam from which my own works flourish. Keep this in mind. In this light, I hope it is clear to see that my use of religious and sacrilegious symbols is not meant to deconstruct their significance or play glibly with their aesthetics, as is the current trend, nor is it meant as sanctimonious moral instruction. I am inclined towards the use of ecstatic language, references, and metaphor, be it religious or scientific, since it is one of allusion to transcendental phenomena, inextricably coupled with the process of self-actualization. My fascination with it is born by disappointment with the reductionist language of post-structuralism. It is from this cannibalistic tradition that I form my understanding of the perverse. Purportedly, the most cited author in history, Michel Foucault, superbly demonstrated Anna Freud's defense mechanism of projection in arguing that perversion, sexuality, and even truth itself were social constructs synthesized and implanted by so-called dominant discourses. He crafted the term power knowledge, defining knowledge as ultimately a result of power systems, to legitimize his sadistic obsession with power. If you do not believe this obsession originated in his penchant for 8-year-old Tunisian boys, then at the very least you will concede it may be related to his political interest in lowering the age of consent to 13 years old, which he signed a petition for in 1977, along with many significant collaborators. I highlight these biographical facts not as a salacious moral crusade, but as a means of understanding post-structuralist epistemology, just as I am doing with my own work. Nonetheless, it seems that for Foucault and his friends, the pervert within became the pervert without. And so, it is not surprising that Derrida argued, as seen here, any and all text could have no definite meaning. In reality, Derrida is not concerned with convincing us that perception is impossible. What he really wants is to convince himself. For if perception is impossible, then he never has to face the reality of his flaws. For the perverted, confusion is perfection. It is this perversion process which I find exemplified unconsciously in the work of the post-structuralists that connects the characters across my stories. In attempting to portray this process, however, I was stylistically inspired by the work of Andrea Dworkin, whose unflinching literary voice informed Aperon's menagerie of intellectually stalwart yet emotionally stunted protagonists, and Peter Sotos, who, unlike Dworkin, deals with the reality of perversion rather than an ideological interpretation of it. Dworkin's explicit meaning is almost nonsensical, as seen here in her quote on sex, while the implicit reality underlying her words is given coherent symbolic representation in Sotos. Thus, the synthesis of their work clarifies the at least compelling logic of perversion. the process by which truth, and therefore human potential, are manipulated, confused, and corrupted. In my story, The Lover, corruption is the animating and defining force. While the plot mainly inhabits the consciousness of a frustrated and repressed young man, I wanted to begin the story with the voice of his lover, Lilith, as she explains her own view of truth and love. In her monologue, that's shown on this slide, she perverts the symbolic truth of the Kabbalah's creation myth into one of destruction. Ein Sof translates from Hebrew to the infinite, or has no end, and is used as a name for God transcendent or God in his pure essence. His withdrawal, therefore, may be interpreted as an act of creative love. The consequences that flow from this symbolic narrative represent a variety of truths. For example, it is clear in this exact moment that my speech, my bringing into being of my being, necessitates your withdrawal into silence. All these symbolic fragments may serve to say truth or ultimate reality, or even the reality of my words in this moment, are uncovered through withdrawal. Heidegger's Being and Time provides a philosophical framework for this. He says, the assertion is true means it uncovers the entity in itself. The being true of an assertion must be understood as being uncovering. This phenomenon is the foundation of the primordial phenomenon of truth. Like an ascetic, Lilith perverts this natural truth by reducing withdrawal to ignorance and defining its purpose, like Dworkin, or Foucault, in power, death, and nihilism. Now, out of this bleakness, we may return to the question of why. Why should the perversion of post-structuralist intellectuals and dysfunctional archetypes matter? For this, we must also return to the question of epistemology. Good fiction, according to Gardner, is a dream. Being a dream, it aims ultimately to uncover the concealed truth of our unconscious, from which consciousness arises, in the only medium it can understand, that being the medium of that arch-cheat nature, as Nabokov puts it. Archetypes, as manifest aspects of one's instincts, give us our consciousness by translating the unconscious for our conscious apprehension. Our foundational mind, the mind that perceives reality itself rather than a representation of it, cannot speak, cannot make signs. It can only reveal symbols, unbind affects, and by being a conduit of the natural world to which we are inextricably bound as biological organisms, its communication can frighten us with its power, its resonance, its truth. Through writings A Perron's collection of short stories, I have tried to partially undergo this epistemological process by, unlike my protagonists, allowing the ugliness and discomfort of my unconscious to uncover aspects of itself, thus practicing the being uncovering that disposes me towards a fuller, truer picture of myself. As Jesus says in the Gospel of Thomas, if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. Just as the infinite is encountered through the finite, purpose can only be encountered through perversion, and so truth is encountered through the deception of fiction. Thank you.
I think I need to increase my vocabulary.